So good afternoon, everyone. I'm very happy to be here with you. This is my first ever Kai presentation. Thank you. So, who said, professional presentations have to be boring. So, I'm Ghassan Bati. I'm from University. I'm working for them as a teaching assistant in the computer engineering department. I'm also a PhD candidate at Rutgers, the State University of New Jersey. This is a joint work between me and my advisor, Professor Vivek Singh, whose title is Trust Us, Mobile Phone Use Patterns Can Predict Individual Trust Propensity. So basically, I will just follow the same order of the paper, and I would love at the end of this presentation to answer any valuable question you may have. So, talking about trust propensity or tendency. Well, trust propensity or tendency is defined as a dispositional willingness to rely on others, all others. There's no doubt there are many applications in our lives where understanding, modeling, and inferring trust propensity of people is very important. Just to appreciate this importance, let me give you some examples. Think of the importance of trust propensity or tendency in doing any transaction pretty much in a shared economy setting, in a self-driving car, or in identifying a person's default preferences in peer-to-peer networking, file sharing, or human computation-based tasks. One thing we can see in all of these examples, and many more that may come in your mind, is that understanding trust as of yet is very important, and we predict it to be more important in the future as well, not less. Now, trust propensity has been studied obviously in various sciences like sociology, psychology, and many more. But usually the way it is measured for people is either by filling out paper surveys or playing some game experiments at labs. Unfortunately, these two methods have various problems, like biases, constraints in time and budget, as well as scalability issue. I mean by this, we cannot recruit millions, billions of people in a study, and I'm pretty sure if you have done one field study, you will appreciate what I'm saying right now. So what do? I stop the presentation, we go home? No, we have a solution that is low cost, fast, automatic, and scalable to understand, model, infer, and predict trust propensity of people using their own mobile phone metadata. We were inspired by many works in the literature that was using mobile phone metadata to predict many things, many aspects of our lives, like GPA, cooperation, depression, social capital, and many more. In order for us to create this new method and model, we have basically done Rutgers Wellbeing Study. That was a 10-week lab study approved by Rutgers IRB, where we recruited 50 participants, 18 females and 32 males. Mostly they were undergraduate students from the same university, Rutgers University, whose ages ranges between 18 to 21 years, and the median annual family income was ranging between $50,000 to $75,000 American dollars. And we asked our participants to install an Android application that would capture their call logs, SMS logs, and GPS logs, and the contents for privacy and ethical considerations. And then we asked them to attend 3 in-person sessions to do the following. In the first one, they have signed the consent to voluntarily participate in the study. They have received intensives of $20, $30, 50 American US dollars. And then they have filled out a trust survey. More details are coming very soon about the survey, the scale. And then we asked them about their demography information, specifically age, gender, marital status, school, and income. Now, let's talk a little bit about the trust propensity descriptor or the scale. We have basically used General Trust Scale, GTS, done by Yamagishi and Yamagishi, which basically measure trust propensity of people. This scale has basically six questions that are scaling from 5, meaning very often, to 1, meaning never. Some of the questions of the survey were like, most people are basically honest, most people are basically good and kind. Why we have selected this particular survey? Well, for several reasons. Let me mention some. This survey has been widely used and accepted in the literature. It has been, per Google Scholar, cited at least 1,800 times. The beauty of this survey basically that it is not restricted to a specific context, so this will help us basically interpret the results in a wide variety of everyday applications. And then there are several studies that supported its predictive validity. Now, in terms of the scores of our 50 participants, the maximum was 100 theoretically. In terms of the participants, the maximum was 97, the minimum was 40, the median was 73, and the mean was about 71. Now, from now on, you will keep hearing me repeating this term, phoneotype. And it is proposed by my advisor back in his paper in UBCOM 2016, which is basically all it means is a phonotype feature is basically a composite or combination of individuals' traits as observable via a mobile phone. Just think of it, if you know a little bit about biology, like the phenotypes, which is basically representing some traits about the organism. Now here, the minute you hear phoneotype, I hope that what comes to your mind is something related to phone use, like how many calls I made, received, SMS messages I sent, received, GPS locations I visited. As when I say demography, what comes to your mind is something like age, gender, income. If you don't understand anything, no problem. All I want you to remember throughout the presentation that these are the data that we collected from the participants' Android applications. Now, how do we create various features using these data that we collected from the phones, trying to predict people's trust propensity? We have basically done a literature review of studies that have already used phone metadata, trying to predict personality traits conceptually as well as empirically. Unfortunately, I don't have time to go over all the features we have created. However, you will see the details in the paper. But just let me give you an example on how we drive some of them. Now, we know that social capital basically describes the ability of individuals or groups to access resources embedded in their social network. We know also that social capital basically comes in two variants or types: bonding and bridging. Bonding refers to relations with friends and families, meaning strong ties, and bridging refers to relations with friends of friends, meaning weak ties. Some researchers basically, they suggested, or they have shown that social capital is connected with trust propensity. This is conceptually. Now, empirically, some of my lab mates have shown that social capital is connected with phone use. So what do we do in this new work? We basically link weak and strong ties to bridging and bonding social capital, trying to predict trust propensity. In summary, we have created 24 features taken from the mobile phone data of the participants that are categorized in 3 types. We are trying to capture 3 different types of the use patterns of our participants. The first one is their social behavior. And some examples of this category, some features, are like total number of calls they have made or received, they have missed, SMS messages received and sent, and GPS location visited, for example. The second category is basically we are trying to understand their spatial mobility, if you will, their spatial trajectory. An example of these features is something like their gyro radius. Last but not least, we would like to get an idea about their activity during the days and nights, during weekends and weekdays, so we are capturing their temporal rhythms. Now, the question I would love, hopefully, to answer today is, do phoneotypic, these features that we have collected from phones, are they able to predict trust propensity of people? In order for us to answer this question, we have basically done 2 types of analyses. First one is regression analysis. The second one is classification analysis. We have chosen these 2 types of analyses trying to accommodate various real-life applications. In most of the social theories, sometimes you need to get an idea about trust propensity in terms of a score. So this is a regression problem. A real life application, you have many applications in social theory sciences. Now, in classification, we are thinking about shared economy settings, for example, a ride-sharing application. Sometimes all you need is to classify people into groups depending on their trust propensity. Now, let's talk a little bit about regression analysis first. Now, in both of the analyses, we have created 3 model types. The first one, as you can see here, the first one is the demography-only model that includes only the demography features like age and income. The second one is the phenotype, which basically includes features taken from the phone, and we combine both types of features. As you can see here in the table, the first correlation between the predicted values of the trust propensity score of the participants and the actual values in correlation was pretty much 0.27. This number dramatically increases on average to be 0.53 using mobile phone data, and when you combine both features, this number keeps increasing. Since we have 100-fold bootstrapping of each value, we can do an NPER t-tests for the correlation, trying to know whether or not the difference between these 3 models is statistically significant or not, and indeed they are. The phenotype, as you can see all the way in the line, the phenotype model is statistically significant over the demo, and the same thing applies as you can see in the slide. Now, when you are considering a mean absolute error of plus or minus 7.7, and you are talking about scores ranging between 40 to 97, I think this is a good acceptable estimation. Now, this is encouraging. Let's take a look at the classification results. Now, since we have 24 features taken from the phones and 5 demographic features, so we need to do some features selection, and we have done it. And the most predictive features that predict trust propensity of people are the presented ones in front of you. Based on every model, you have ones for demography, phenotype, and both. Now, since this is a classification problem, so we have done a median split based on the trust score. The median value, if you recall, was 73. So we have 27 participants with high trust propensity and 23 ones with low trust propensity. Let's take a look at the results of the classification. We have used many famous machine learning algorithms like AdaBoost, Random Forest, K-star with 0R, which basically facilitates interpreting the results. Basically, it's only a baseline that gives you all the time the mode of the sample data of yours. And we have done a 10-fold cross-validation, and we repeated this experiment 10 times. So we have 100 values for AUC, which is a metric to measure the performance of machine learning models. We have seen the same thing, same pattern of increment in the performance in F1 and accuracy, which is not shown here, but it's in the paper. And we again done NPER t-tests trying to see the difference between these models. And we have seen that the phenotype is statistically significant over the demo, and the both is statistically significant over the demo. Not only that, as you can see here all the way in the left, that with the demography only, you get kind of a reasonable performance, which is 68 roughly, but this really increases on average with phenotype to be 81%, and this is really encouraging. Now, very quickly, what we have done, lastly, in terms of analysis, we have done a person's correlations analysis, and here all we want is to, we are trying to understand the social mobile behavior of individuals in our study with different propensities to trust. So this analysis is a post hoc analysis. It's not a prospective analysis in its own. And I can't again go, unfortunately, over the whole entire details, but what I can tell you in summary, and you can go for details to the paper, that people with high trust propensity tend to be more socially active, yet they tend to limit their social activities both spatially and temporally. Finally, let's very quickly talk about the privacy and ethical considerations. Our research team at any time had no access to private data of the participants. Our application requires lesser permissions than popular applications freely used by people and widely. We note the ethical consideration in giving a person a score based on their propensity to trust. However, history repeats itself. Similar reservations have been raised about conventional paper survey, and instead of waiting for perfect privacy guidelines to emerge, we posit that studies like ours can raise awareness and inform policy debate. We acknowledge some of the limitations of this work, the homogeneity of our sample, as well as the fact that our sample size is a little bit small, 50 plus individuals. So this will make us cautious in generalizing our findings. However, this study is the first of its kind, who has great implications with some refinement and validation. We are proposing a scalable methodology that will capture trust propensity of billions that one day may complement surveys. This new method will allow us to do research about trust propensity and hopefully in the future other social theories at a scale that has never been reached before. And finally, we cannot deny the fact that we live in an era and time surrounded by various devices, mobile devices, wearable devices, smart homes, smart everything. So understanding the way we interact with these devices is very important, and hopefully this will allow us as individuals and societies using our own mobile phone metadata to take wiser, healthier, smarter decisions that will impact and enhance our lives and our well-being as well. I would like to acknowledge my affiliation and sponsor Qura University, as well as my lab mates in the behavioral informatics lab for processing the data and helping in publishing this work. Thank you so much for listening, and I will be more than happy to answer any question if you have one. Thank you.
We have a few moments for questions, so if you come to the mic, please give us your name, affiliation, and then go on with your question.
Hello, thank you very much. My name is Matt Jones from the Future Interaction Technology Lab. Do you think there are, or to what extent there be cultural differences? So we've done quite a lot of work in India and Southern Africa, and very different views on things like sharing devices and privacy. So in your measure here, do you think the framework will cope with different cultures, or will you have to adapt it? Or?
Yeah, well, this is a very good question. So basically, as you heard, most of our participants were students from the same school, undergraduate. So the same concept, the same tool could be used, and this is what we hopefully trying to propose in as a future work. But it really depends. The only idea is we are trying, in a way, to complement some the paper surveys, for example. So there are many social theories that have been studied for years before us. So can we, using mobile phone metadata, try to test, validate, or refine these social theories? I think we can.
Great.
Thank you so much for your question. Go ahead, please.
Sian Zhao from Carnegie Mellon University. This is a really interesting talk. Thank you so much.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
My question is, did you notice during your 10 weeks of data collection if there's any missing data during the period, and if there is, how much do you think there is missing, and how did you deal with that?
Yeah, well, thank you so much. This is a very good question as well. Although I didn't participate actually in this study, it was done in 2015, but you will see in the paper, but for time constraints, I didn't have time actually to go over this. But obviously, yes, sometimes you have people who doesn't, for example, turn on their GPS location feature, so we don't have GPS data. Sometimes you have people who drop out from the study. Okay, so the initial, for example, number of participants here was 59. And what I'm presenting now is 50, so we had to remove 9 participants. Sometimes you come across some outliers. So you do basically what you usually do in any data processing task, if you will. Thank you for your question. Hopefully this answers your question. Yeah, go ahead, please.
Hello, my name is Niels van Berkel, University of Melbourne. Thank you for the talk. Congrats on the first paper.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
So I had a question regarding the variables you measure. So you keep track of phonotype, which is, I believe, a constant variable on smartphone usage. And you did the same, I think, for trust propensity. So it was something that stayed the same for a participant throughout the study, right? Have you considered the fact that trust levels change over time?
Yes.
And maybe the fact that smartphone users also changes over time, right?
Yes.
So is this something you would be willing to look into the future? Because maybe your smartphone user affects our trust levels or the other way around.
Yeah, this is actually a very good question. So basically, we are looking at trust propensity. It's just your willingness to trust others. And usually this is something that is a long term. It doesn't change like over day. It's not like a behavior. It may influence your behavior, but we are just talking about the initial, if you will, like the values of people that barely changes over time. Now, as for the phoniotype, the phone data, we are capturing calls as well as SMS and GPS location logs. So this is only the first step we are taking, but you can only look at phone data, for example. You can take a look at SMS only, GPS only, but over time when you are talking about a year or two, for example, although we are only doing it 14 weeks, I think you will end up probably getting the same pattern. This is my guess. Thank you so much for your question.
Great, thank you.
Okay, thank you all.